Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Wednesdays. It's Wednesday, right? Crazy times. 13 days until the election. Get out and vote. My ballot is in. I hope all of you are voting early. I'll give you some of the data out there that suggests that things are going very well. Much to discuss in the world of sports, college football, upcoming NFL, and more. But right off the top, we're going to dive into the election and give you the absolute latest. A little bit different backdrop today because as soon as I finish this show, I'm going to have them log me out. Then I'll log back into Fox News, and I'm going to be on with Martha McCollum live on her program. So obviously, for those of you out there who follow my media schedule, just finished Clay and Buck. Sit down here, pound away. Going to go get a shirt and a jacket, put it on. Boom, I'll be on Fox News. Then I'll be on a little bit later with Rowan Hutton. Got to get my gambling picks up for the college football. And then got to go rep out a bunch of 185 reps, pick up my kids, take them out to dinner. That is my day to the extent that you care. But that is everything that is going on here. Also, if you're out there and you're like, you know what I need more of? I need more Clay in my life. I did an hour-and-a-half long podcast with John Christ, comedian, really funny guy. It is up. We'll probably share it somewhere on the OutKick accounts or on the OutKick website. I'll share it at some point. Hour-and-a-half discussion, hopefully funny, hopefully engaging with you guys that I did on Monday that is now live, in addition to all the other shows that I am doing. But we begin 13 days from the election. Again, I say to all of you, go vote, go vote, go vote. If you have not voted, you have no ability, in my opinion, to have your voice heard and taken seriously by anyone because you have not done the bare minimum to make your opinion known. So I have already voted. I told you that this was going to happen, but Kamala Harris is panicked. Let me give you the absolute latest on the data here from the gambling markets. Trump is around, as I am speaking to all of you, a 64% favorite to win. Kamala Harris, 36% favorite to win. Swing states. Swing state voting underway. Trump, 61% favorite to win Pennsylvania, 55% favorite to win Michigan, 70% favorite to win Georgia, 65% favorite to win Nevada, 57% favorite to win Wisconsin, 70% favorite to win in North Carolina, and 74% favorite to win in Arizona. That is all the live reaction numbers as I am speaking to you. Now, there are lots of different places out there where you can track real-time numbers on how voting is going in a variety of different states. For instance, right now in Florida, these numbers came down just about an hour ago. Early voting in Florida, Republicans are winning by 27 points, 54.3 to 27.4. This is real-time voting in the state of Florida. If you consider mail voting, which tends to favor Democrats, in mail voting, Republicans are up, combined with early voting, 7 points. Now, don't pay attention to what the numbers show until your vote is in, and in my opinion, until you've taken friends and neighbors to vote as well. You have not done your fair share to have your voice heard. But Trump only won Florida by 3 points in the 2020 election. I think Trump is likely to win Florida if these trends continue and people run through the finish line through 13 days by double digits. I also believe, and this is hugely important, every state, and I've been arguing this for some time, but I want to make sure we clip and share this. Every single state in America should exactly copy what Florida does in terms of its voting tallies. Florida is the biggest and best state when it comes to getting all the data out as soon after election data is finished, and as soon as election night is over, that is, voting is completed. They're better at getting their numbers out than any state in America. And the reason why that happened is because in 2000, for those of you who are old enough to remember this, Florida was an absolute disaster. The presidential election dragged on for months. Nobody was sure who won the state of Florida. And Florida went back on a bipartisan basis and said, we can never go through this again. They put in place new policies. And I guarantee you, by 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock on the East Coast, you will 100% know who won the state of Florida. We shouldn't be having these multi-day election counting mechanisms. We should know on election night who won every race. 99% of all the votes should be in within a couple of hours, and we should be saying, okay, this is finished. Every state should look at what Florida has done, and we should get that taken care of. They're already saying now it might take a week. It might take 10 days. We can't have full faith and transparency in elections when it takes a week to figure out who won a race and all the votes are still coming in like that. Just can't happen. So my position on this is every state should be like Florida. Keep up the pace. All right. Kamala had a press availability outside of the vice president's residence earlier this afternoon. Karine Jean-Pierre just walked out at the White House press briefing and said that the president believes Donald Trump is a fascist. Their closing argument is Trump is Hitler and it's going to be a handmaid's tale when it comes to abortion. Make no mistake about what they are saying. Now, I believe the reason why Trump is going to win is because this is an EBC election. As I've been saying, it's as easy as EBC: economy, border, crime. Kamala and Biden have failed on all three fronts. This is not a challenging proposition. Trump's right on the economy. Trump's right on the border. Trump's right on crime. Fixing everything that's wrong with all three. That's why he's going to win. It is a sign of political desperation that the Democrats are now running the Trump is Hitler playbook. They got somebody at The Atlantic to write a Trump is Hitler article. The Atlantic is owned by Laurene Powell Jobs, who is a great friend, was there for the swearing in of Kamala Harris. She owns The Atlantic. She is Steve Jobs' widow, and she is using her media company as an in-kind contribution to Kamala Harris. It's not going to work, though, because this is why I said Trump at McDonald's was so brilliant. This is why Trump doing Joe Rogan is so smart. This is why Trump doing OutKick, and I'm going to get to that in a moment, with both me and with Tyrus recently. He's not Hitler. The fact that this is their argument, only brain-dead people actually believe this. Trump is a billionaire who decided to give up the trappings of celebrity and fame and put himself legitimately in the firing line over politics. And they're trying to kill him because they've convinced enough of their deranged left-wing lunatic army that Trump is Hitler. And by the way, I wish somebody would follow up and say, if you really thought Trump was Hitler, when someone tries to kill him, you shouldn't wish the best to his family. You should say, damn, I wish they hadn't missed. At least that would be honest. That tells you they don't actually believe it. But Al Smith, the dinner, the McDonald's, Joe Rogan, OutKick, all the other media outlets, Trump is going to win. As long as you guys keep your foot to the metal here on the pedal to the metal on the election. But this is such a bad argument. Okay, Trump is Hitler. You have to be brain dead left-wing lunatic to actually believe that. And I would just point out, if Trump actually wanted to be a dictator, there's never been a point in time other than in the weeks and months after 9/11 when a president could have taken more power on the federal level than during the early days of COVID. And you know what Trump did? He deferred to mayors and governors all over the country. He could have taken complete power then if he wanted to, and lots of people would have said, please regulate me harder. Instead, he decided to allow that to pass. All right. So that in and of itself is pretty strong evidence that Trump is not actually Hitler. But the other argument they're trying to make, and this works on a lot of women, they're telling you, oh my goodness, Trump is going to drag you out of the house by your hair. There's going to be a national registry of pregnancies. These are things that they've actually argued. There are going to be police officers stopping you if you try to cross state lines. All of these things are out there. Sorry, I meant to say during COVID. There's been 2 times, Adam is telling me that I said 9/11. There have been 2 times in my life where the president could have taken complete dictatorial powers. In the immediate days after 9/11 and during COVID. Trump deferred to mayors and to state governors and let them make their own decisions under federalism with what regulations and restrictions would occur during COVID. You can actually argue that he should have been more aggressive in giving us national protections. But when he was given the opportunity to take the most dictatorial powers imaginable, he passed on it. And then you know what he did? He left the White House when Biden was elected. So he's got 1 term left. He's going to win. He's not Hitler. Trust me, at this point, I know Trump a little bit, having interviewed him 10 times. Hitler is the most ridiculous argument out there. Only morons believe it. But on abortion, Roe v. Wade overturned. And they have tried to say it's going to be a handmaid's tale. You're going to try to cross state lines. Police are going to grab you and restrict you. If you get pregnant, they're going to have a national registry of pregnancies. I don't even know how that would work. That's crazy talk. They're basically saying that women would be forced to, at the power of the state, carry babies that they did not want. Now, that is untrue. And I've written about it. It's all in this book. You can go read it. But I'll tell you exactly what I think about abortion to the extent that anybody cares in a moment. But I think what's important here is this is on the front page of the New York Times today. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the number of abortions nationwide have actually increased. You can go read it yourself. I want to clip this because I think it's important. Again, this idea that somehow abortion is going to motivate, it's an emotional argument that is in no way supported by the actual data. That is, again, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the number of abortions in the United States have increased. And if you desperately care about abortion, it's not even a federal issue anymore. It is a state issue. Whatever state you live in, Roe v. Wade just threw it back to the states and said every state should be able to set their abortion policy. Some states, like California and New York, basically you can have an abortion up to the moment when you would deliver a baby in the 9th month, and it's allowed. I disagree with that. Other states, they're voting on it right now. In Florida, for instance, there is a 6-week abortion limit. After 6 weeks, you're not allowed to have an abortion. They're voting on that in Florida right now. Other states have been more restrictive. It is a state issue. It's not a federal issue. And they're trying to sell you this idea of, oh, abortions will never. There are actually more abortions now than there were before Roe v. Wade was overturned. If you are voting solely on abortion, I think you are responding to emotional blackmail, fear porn from the Democrat Party. And it's working on lots of women. Because basically that's the only thing Kamala is running on is Trump is Hitler and abortion. Now, I wrote about it. It's all laid out. You can have whatever opinion you want. I'm a crazy First Amendment absolutist. You can argue that there should be no exceptions at all for rape, life of a mother, or incest, that abortion should be completely prohibited. You can argue that you believe that 9-month abortions should be permitted and fine and okay. Okay? That is the two abortion extreme arguments. About 10% of Americans believe rape, life of a mother, no exceptions. About 10% of Americans believe we should allow 9-month abortion. I'm with y'all in the 80%. Where do I personally draw the line? I think somewhere in the first trimester. I believe in rape exceptions, incest exceptions, life of the mother exceptions. I believe the line should be drawn somewhere in the first trimester-ish. That's if I were a lawmaker. I'm not. I think it should be a state-related issue. And in my opinion, I've got the old school abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. I wish there were no abortions. I wish there were no accidental pregnancies. I want there to be as many babies as possible because I'm concerned that the global population is collapsing. My position on abortion is different now than it was when I was a kid and I didn't have kids of my own. Because I think a lot of you are like me. When you actually go through the process of having children, you go and get the ultrasounds, you listen to the baby heartbeat, you get to watch your child growing, you come to feel differently about life than you did when you were a younger guy or girl and you hadn't had a baby yourself. Becoming a dad changed my perspective on abortion. I believe it should be far less common than I did when I was 25 before I had kids. Frankly, than when I was 30 before I had 3 kids. And I've talked about this, and I think I wrote about it in the book. But really, directly, my second son, everything was perfect. Well, let me take a step back. I'll just be deadly transparent, honest with all of you. First baby we had, my oldest son, my wife started to have complications with him early in her pregnancy, and we went to the emergency room. And they ran all the tests and everything else, and they said, yeah, we really don't know what's going to happen. It's 50-50 whether she's going to have a miscarriage or not. Basically, whether this baby is going to be born. Now, he's about to be 17 in January. He's healthy. Everything turned out great. But that was our oldest son. They didn't know if the pregnancy was going to continue based on issues that she was having. Now, he's fine. He's healthy. It's great. But that's a stressful thing for any of you who have gone through having kids. Second child. Everything was great. Perfect pregnancy. I'm actually speaking at Vanderbilt Law School in a sports law class in September of 2010. And my wife calls me and she says, I think you should get to the hospital. I think we're going to have the baby today. So I left. I didn't even stay. I was sitting there at the head of the table, ready to address the classroom. I said, I'm sorry. It was David Williams, chancellor of Vanderbilt, head athletic director, his sports law class at Vanderbilt Law School. Some kids may remember that 14 years ago. I said, I got to go. My wife's going into labor. And I left, and that afternoon, she had a baby, our second son. But it was super scary. Because while she was going into labor, first of all, they gave her the epidural, and the epidural made her pass out. They hit some vein in her back or whatever else, and her eyes rolled back into her head, and she completely passed out while in labor. That was scary. They had to bring in a lot of people to get her back up. And then the obstetrician's in there to deliver the baby, and she starts to panic because on the monitor where you can see the baby heart rate and the mom heart rate, the baby heart rate starts to dive. And they bring in the NICU squad. And if you've ever been in the delivery room, it is terrifying suddenly when you see all of the NICU nurses come running in because they're concerned about an emergency during the delivery. And she said the problem was the umbilical cord had gotten wrapped around my second son's neck, and his overall heart rate was going down, and she was afraid that he might get strangled and lose oxygen to his brain because the umbilical cord was around his neck. So the first two pregnancies we had, the first one we weren't sure if it was going to happen. The second one in the delivery room, you're super excited, everything's going great, and suddenly you think to yourself, oh my goodness, this kid may die in birth, or there may be some awful thing that happens to my wife, his mom, and him because all the NICU squad is in, and they pull you back from being able to be right by the delivery area. Now look, it's terrifying. And so I respect anybody's opinion on any different level. But when you go through having kids and you become a dad or a mom, it changes you, and you see and think things differently than you did when you theoretically contemplated what having kids might be like. So I give you those stories to say that having been through this process, I have a different view of pregnancy than I did before. And so I don't want there to be any abortions. I want every baby to be wanted. I want every baby to be born. I also recognize that there are some awful things that happen. Rape, incest, life of the mother. I would have exceptions for those. First trimester, I would draw the line somewhere. Again, you can argue. I think second trimester and third trimester abortions should not exist, again, unless it's rape, life of a mother, all those things, right? That's my position. But my big point in bringing this up is if you're a woman and you're out there and you are 18 to 45 years old or whatever the age range is of a birth-eligible mother, or you are a grandma and you are voting because you have bought into the idea that it will be a Handmaid's Tale in the United States, there'll be a pregnancy registry, you'll be arrested if you try to cross state lines, that's not true. It's actually completely unsupported by data. And if you doubt me, the front page of today's New York Times says there are more abortions today than there were before Roe v. Wade was overturned. So this idea that the overturning of Roe v. Wade has somehow created a situation where women are captives of men and they don't control in any way their own body, it's just not true. So that's my take there. I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday. Encourage you, by the way, to go listen to Clay and Buck. We talked with Tulsi Gabbard, who is now a Republican, and with Hung Cao, who is running for the Senate from Virginia. Both of them were fantastic. Encourage you, if you haven't already, download and sign up for the Clay and Buck podcast, where you can hear me every day, 12 to 3 Eastern. Also, I love everybody who listens. All 50 states, 500 plus affiliates. We appreciate the millions of you that listen to Clay and Buck every single day. There's a big gender discrepancy here. In the state of Georgia in particular, only 28% of men in the most recent Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll are voting for Kamala Harris. In that poll, I think it was 59 to 28 for men. This is why I am optimistic that Kamala is going to lose, because overwhelmingly men are rejecting her candidacy, and that is going to be ultimately a disaster for her. Okay, couple of other things. Warren Buffett, I saw the headline, make sure this is right, Adam, and the LA Times have declined to endorse Kamala Harris. This is a pretty big indictment of Kamala Harris. Warren Buffett said he's sitting out the election. He's not providing any endorsement. Probably the greatest investor of maybe in American history, honestly, if you look at his performance versus the S&P 500. And the LA Times, which I believe had endorsed every Democrat presidential candidate going back to 2004. Kamala now lives in the LA area. For the LA Times to decline to endorse her, as the Teamsters declined to endorse her, is, I think, a sign that her candidacy is on the ropes many different places out there. Major trade, DeAndre Hopkins has been moved to the Kansas City Chiefs. Incredible addition for Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs have had all sorts of major injuries. How about DeAndre Hopkins getting to go from Will Levis to Patrick Mahomes? This is like thinking that you were going to hell, and then they suddenly look at it in the registry, and they're like, I'm sorry, you're going to heaven, and you're going to be in the premium area of heaven. From the worst quarterback starting in the NFL potentially to the best for DeAndre Hopkins. I think he is going to be phenomenal for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they get him for basically a song, a fifth-round pick guaranteed that could elevate to a 4. Adam, correct me if I'm wrong on that, depending on how Hopkins performs. For the rest of the NFL, you already had an undefeated Kansas City Chiefs team, and now they add DeAndre Hopkins, a wily veteran with incredible hands that will be a huge asset for Patrick Mahomes down the stretch run of this season as they try to add yet another Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs roster. The Titans already selling on the season. They're in rebuild mode. Couple of different trades going on before the trade deadline. Will Levis, as I told you, likely to be a complete failure. Going back, I think the Titans are to the draft. We'll see if it's Cam Ward, if it's Shedeur Sanders, if it's Carson Beck. The Titans are likely to end up with a top 5 pick before all is said and done and begin fully the rebuild process, which should have started officially a couple of years ago. All that and more. I'm going to bail on the show now. You'll be able to see me on Fox News in a couple of moments tomorrow. I will be live not only with OutKick the show, but also with Kelly Stewart for The Fade, getting you ready for college football and the NFL weekend to come. I appreciate all of you. And again, the 5th rounder for Hopkins becomes a 4th if the Chiefs reach the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. It's a sad sign if you're a Titans fan that you might as well now be rooting for the Chiefs because that is what helps you out the most. Okay, as always, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'll see you on Fox News in a few moments. This has been OutKick the show.